If you're searching for premier neighborhoods on the north side of Katy, chances are the beautiful homes of Elyson have been all over your results. But choosing a place to live is more complex than just choosing the home itself. So today we're going to cover some key information that you need to know about Elyson, along with some pros and cons that you can't necessarily Google. Hi, my name is Carolyn Bauerschlag, a local real estate agent right here in the West Houston area, and I've helped hundreds of people just like you relocate from all over our country right to our great city. And if you're thinking about making a move to the area, I would love to add you to our client family. Let's start with some important features about the neighborhood. And price, of course, is one of the things that's top of mind for most people conducting a search. Now, Elyson is popular on the North Katy side because it offers some beautiful homes with some excellent amenities for somewhat reasonable buy-in prices. As it stands right now, the buy-in price to get your foot in the door at Elyson is about $300,000. Now, Elyson has something for everyone, and prices right now go all the way up to about $1.1 million. And within the last year, those prices have held pretty true. We've seen prices close out anywhere from $265,000 for a 1,700-ish square foot home, all the way up to about $1.1 million for a truly luxury experience. Now, average price points within the neighborhood are about $545,000, with the median clocking a little bit lower at about $500,000. Now, Elyson is able to offer a little bit of something for everybody because it's going to be a reasonably large community at completion. Now, the estimated number of homes that are going to be on the ground are about 6,200, and estimates are that we're about halfway through that build out right now. So Elyson started in 2016. There's about 3,000 homes on the ground, so we probably have another 8 to 10 years before build out is complete. Now, when you think about 6,200 homes, it's kind of hard to think about how big is that. So for reference, Katy Island, just to the south of Elyson, is going to be about 2,200-ish homes, and Cinco Ranch is 15,000 homes. Now, speaking of Cinco Ranch, Elyson, the community, is developed by the same people that were the brain trust behind Cinco. So Newland Communities is the one who's put Elyson together, which I think is why it has been such an attractive community for people over the last decade. Now, the Newland community folks have taken a lot of time to really build out beautiful amenity centers and features so that people are attracted to the area, right? So when you're marketing a community that's kind of on the farthest west reaching corner of Houston that you can still call Katy, you have to make sure that once people get there, they want to stay. So Elyson today, in 2026, has 2 different clubhouses. They have 2 different pool areas. They've reserved 750 acres of green space for resident use, like for sports courts or just enjoyment. They're going to have 30 miles of interconnected trails by the time this is all said and done. There's tons of pocket parks, splash pads, and there's even a little dog park for your furry friends. So they've really taken a lot of time to make sure there is something for everyone. Now, as you might expect, a well thought out community is not inexpensive. Elyson is a master plan community, which means that it's going to come with a decently hefty price tag for an HOA. So for 2026, the HOA dues start at $1,385 for the year. And some sections may have slightly higher bumps depending on whether or not they have a gate in front of them. What we're starting to see is the tax rate, though, come down in Elyson, which is some good news, but it still is kind of high. So tax rate for 2026 without exemption is 3.26%. So to my ear as the agent, that to me sounds a little bit high. I would like to see tax rates kind of anywhere in the Katy area kind of stick to that 2.6, 2.7. But that tax rate has at least come down over time. When these communities open, they are literal grass fields that they've converted with gas, infrastructure, electricity, utilities, drainage, water, all of it. And that costs money. And what happens is that as the people move in, their tax dollars pay for those features. Now, fortunately, those tax dollars pay down the debt and the debt comes down over time. And so your effective tax rate will decrease over time. So right now, 3.26 with an eye towards it decreasing each year. And another small fee to be aware of as you're planning your move towards Elyson is that they do charge a development fee of $500 per transaction. So you're going to pay when you buy as part of your closing costs, a small capitalization fee that really is just kind of a sunk cost, $500 towards the development improvement of all the amenities in the area. Now, that I would say is a somewhat irritating fee, but it is by no means as substantial as what we see in other neighboring communities where they charge you a quarter or 0.5% of your total home price as that same development fee. Now, speaking of developments, it's not just about the community itself. It's also about all of the businesses that come up to support the population that's moving into Elyson. And fortunately, in the last year or so, we've really started to see that balance kind of tip over in the favorable direction to Elyson. So within the last year, we saw Target open, Chick-fil-A is over there, and there's an Elyson Town Center that's being built that is supposed to be kind of open air shopping, mixed use for retail, restaurants, and commercial space. And just within the last couple of months, actually, 14 new businesses announced that they were going to open in the area. So orthodontia, nail salons, restaurants, workout facilities, all of that is really making its way into Elyson. Target was probably the biggest kind of banner store in the area. And H-E-B actually did somewhat recently announce that they have purchased and secured land within Elyson. And I'm telling you, once H-E-B opens, everyone's property values are going to probably go up as a result. And this is not just me making it up. We've seen this prove out in other communities because H-E-B, the world's best grocery store, is a leader in retail for our area. So when H-E-B lays a stake in the ground and says, we believe that this neighborhood is worth us investing in, guess what? Other businesses follow. Now, I'm going to touch on something else that I think is very important that is hard to Google, and that's going to be, is Elyson in a floodplain? Now, if you were to just open up FEMA's maps and you type in a property address, that property address, first of all, may not register at all in the FEMA maps that are available. And second of all, the FEMA map may be outdated. And what I can tell you as your local friendly real estate agent is that based on what we know about building standards from Harris County and the surrounding areas is that no home is allowed to be constructed in a 100-year floodplain. So if you were to open the Harris County flood mapping tool, it will actually show you that most of Elyson lights up like a Christmas tree, where it looks like the entire community was built into the 100-year floodplain. Now, I mentioned to you that Elyson opened in 2016. Hurricane Harvey happened in 2017. And one of the chief things that all of the marketing reps and builders and development representatives were doing was coming around to us as agents and saying, here's what we have done for flood mitigation. Now, Elyson didn't flood, and it hasn't flooded ever since. But it's important for y'all to know that if you were just to pull the FEMA maps, it might illustrate a picture that isn't true, which is that the homes are graded into the floodplain. What I want you to know, I've got a whole nother video that we'll link in the show notes below, is that developers are charged with having to grade homes above what is called a base flood elevation. So they bring in a whole bunch of dirt and they grade the land up. Now, a natural and reasonable question that a lot of people have is, well, if you're building it up, aren't you just going to flood everyone else around you? The answer is you could, but here comes like the world's best marketing scheme. What these developers got smart with is they said, okay, we have to grade these places out of floodplains. And what they're beholden to is then digging down in direct proportion that same amount of elevation or volume of dirt, right? So here comes the retention pond, otherwise marketed as a lakefront property. So these developers are smart. They know they have to grade the land up. They dig right down in their own backyard. They stick a fountain right in the middle of it, and they call that a lakefront or waterfront premium lot. So all that to say, rest assured that if you are coming into Elyson, it does not have a flooding history. These builders do have to grade them out of the floodplain. And if you're looking at a water lot, just be mindful of that's really a dressed up pretty retention pond. Another important feature of Elyson is, of course, their schools. Now, this is a little bit harder for you to Google, so I do want to point it out. Elyson at completion will be about 90% Katy ISD and about 10% Zone 2 Cy-Fair ISD. And that line or that border is going to be at Peak Road. So anything to the east of Peak Road is going to be Cy-Fair, and anything to the west of Peak is Katy ISD. Now, what's great about Elyson is that it's been such a popular community that Katy ISD has purchased and built 2 elementaries, a junior high, and a high school, all within the boundaries of that community. So you've got McElwain Elementary kind of closer in. Boudney Elementary just opened in 2025. You've got Nelson Junior High and Freeman High School that are sharing a plot of land on the northwest corner of Elyson. So if what you want is kind of that insulated and walkable feel, or more of that tight-knit community feel, Elyson has that in spades for top-notch Katy ISD schools. Now, I promised you a couple of pros and cons, so let's touch on 2 positives right up front. The first is that Elyson is truly a beautiful community. Newland Communities made sure that whenever they were putting this whole landscape together, that they were going to not only build beautiful spaces for people to enjoy, but to engage really high quality builders to put homes down on the ground. So you have on the high semi-custom end, you've got Toll Brothers, you've got Highland Homes, you've got Perry, David Weekley, you've got Chesmar, you've got all of these great builders that really offer a little bit of something for anyone. Now, the smallest home that you can get over in the area is probably about 1,700 square feet, and they go all the way up to about 4,400 square feet. And the idea here was that they wanted to make sure that at every price point, you could either buy in to get your foot in the door, or you could step up and build a really luxury place to stay. And that's something that I really appreciate about the way that this community's been put together. And another pro about Elyson is that the commercial development is finally starting to come into play. Now, prior to 2024 and the end of 2025, I would say you were going to have to drive a pretty decent long way to even get to a good grocery store that you might want to go to, right? And so that might be you going up towards Bridgeland, or that might be you coming south towards Katy in order to find just the basics that you really wanted to get to. But with, like I said before, the announcement of that H-E-B that's going to open, the Target that's already in place, and restaurants opening, and then the Elyson Town Center, we're finally starting to get that critical mass of businesses that are coming in to support the local residents. And of course, there are some cons to living in Elyson. The first and most obvious one to me, and this is not one that's really visible out on the internet, is that Elyson's major thoroughfare, where you're either going to get to 290 or you're going to get to I-10, is a toll road. The Grand Parkway, which is the outer loop of Houston in between I-10 and 290, is a toll. So if you want to go faster than 30 miles an hour on any road in or around your community, you got to get on the Grand Parkway, and it's going to cost you money every single time. And I would say this is probably one of the most cited reasons why people say, you know what, I just feel like it's a little too far out there for me. And the second obvious con, at least to a local, is that the traffic is horrendous. Whether or not you're commuting in the middle of the day or you're commuting during peak traffic hours, unfortunately, you're probably going to be in some reasonably heavy bumper-to-bumper situations. Now, the good news is that TxDOT, or the Texas Department of Transportation, has announced an expansion that's supposed to start in the middle of 2026 for that exact stretch of Grand Parkway from I-10 all the way north to 290. But the bad news is that it's projected to take about 3 years on the short side, maybe 4 on the long end, for that expansion to come to fruition. So as someone who traverses this corridor fairly regularly for my job, this is not really something that I'm looking forward to. I do think this is going to be a situation where it gets worse before it gets better, but it is absolutely necessary for this expansion to happen. Now, I live in Cinco Ranch, which is on the free section of Grand Parkway, which is between I-10 and then south towards 1093. We just lived through our own expansion that's finally coming to a close, and it is meaningfully better. So I know it's necessary, and I know that we need it, but if you're going to move to Elyson, I would say be prepared for about 3 years of heavier traffic than you probably want. If you're thinking about making a move to the West Houston area, I would love to be your realtor. Make sure to check the description below to see my phone number and email and the best way to connect. And if you found value in what you saw here today, make sure to click the link below and subscribe, because we put content like this out every single week. See you soon.